Hello, everybody. Welcome to our woodland walk, and hello, Dr. Lindsay Branham.
Hello, so good to be with you.
Thank you for coming to be with us again. And we have the very, very exciting thing to talk about today. Thing is not the right word. This book that I'm going to hold up. So, Dr. Lindsay Branham, environmental psychologist, author, film director, eco-doula, woman of many talents, has created this book that is essentially going to be like one of the kind of core texts of for the ACER community from now on, I feel. Um, we're here to talk about this amazing book, which I know that everyone in our community is going to just adore deeply. Please, Lindsay, tell us a little bit about you and your journey to creating this book that we'll then get into more details of.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's just such a pleasure to talk to people that already love trees, so I'm in good company. Um, yeah, the journey of writing this book. For about 15 years, I was a war photographer, war journalist, primarily working in Central Africa, documenting really difficult human rights abuses, environmental crises. And 2020 hits and the world shut down, and I got really sick. I didn't have COVID, but all of these different symptoms started kind of blooming in my body and creating like a constellation of challenge and difficulty. Um, but that really became like the portal for my like decomposition of like an old way of being and an old kind of framework, and an invitation. It created kind of like this porousness, I think, and like receptivity slash desperation to go on a healing odyssey. And it just so happened that my parents had moved to the edge of this national forest in Colorado. Again, the world was shut down, so I came here to visit them, and I really felt like the trees in the forest like summoned me and like seduced me into spending time with them. And as I did this, not just appreciation, but like real kinship opened. Um, and then kind of the rest is like history, I guess, and like is in the book. But this exploration of healing, of homecoming, coming back into the body, back into the living world, this birthright of deep reciprocity, and intimacy that were offered, to be in participation with nature.
Mm. It's the book is written so beautifully, and you can feel in it the deep connection you have with trees. And you talk about your childhood and attachment stuff and growing up in a kind of tough family in a way. Um, and that I loved what you said. It was so profound that through the trees you it was like developing a secure attachment to nature. And that just blew my whole mind. Like, wow, that's what's happening. We can form a secure attachment, even if we have an insecure attachment, an avoidant attachment, an anxious attachment, we can form a secure attachment with trees. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I should talk about the title. So Heartwood is the center of the tree, the densest, innermost part, the most precious in a way, but it's also technically not alive. They're dead cells in the center of the tree, but yet that structure keeps the entire being alive, which I think is this gorgeous kind of meditation on like the blurriness between life and death and how in nature nothing is wasted. But the book is really this invitation to like find your heartwood. And my human heartwood was my grandmother, who is no longer here, but is very much here. And that unconditional love that I had with that one person helped me be able to recognize that unconditional safe refuge, in trees. And from attachment lens, I think, we know very well, right? Like the power of a secure attachment and what that does for someone's like entire lifespan and predicting well-being and the health and of other relationships, level of stress one carries, anxiety, like everything is impacted by having a safe and secure anchor, where we can just fully be seen and accepted and loved as we are. And I think it was through the process of my PhD studies that I first kind of came to this idea of like, could nature be a secure attachment? And there had been some studies, mostly qualitative, on like looking at that. But I then turn it into like a quantitative, like experimental study to show that that was at least like in this big model, like related between our sense of the body, interoception, and our pro-environmental behavior, how we show up for nature, is really mediated by that depth of relationship. And I think secure attachment is like a great way to think about it because that lens is already pretty ubiquitous in society. It's been like pop culture, right? So, but kind of putting that aside, what if that secure attachment is actually also sacred, also like kindred, also full of like interspecies speaking and hearing and listening. Um, and so I love that you brought us to that because I think I mean, it blew my mind too, but I was like, wait, that's so obvious, but like it wasn't obvious, right? Because it's like it gives that permission, I think, to go spend that time with nature, knowing that you're actually fostering something that's could help us also change the way we interact with other humans, actually. If we're like retaught how to be how to be present, how to listen, how to attune, um, how to be open-hearted, how to be non-defended,
Mm-hmm.
how to trust, forgive, all of it. But I think there's one little anecdote that kind of taught me this, where I've been forming this like kindred bond with this little humble stand of three aspen trees up in this forest. I mean, this is a vast wilderness area. So why out of all this wilderness, these three trees, I don't know. I feel like they really called me, but I was on this long walk. It had been like 2 hours, so I'd passed so many trees. And yet I got to these three and I felt like they really pulled me to like pause there. And they're not the most fabulous trees you've ever seen. It's not the most like beautiful part of the forest, but that's like also part of what I love. They're just there in their in their place. And after that bond had been created, when I would go on other walks up to finding them, I would have this thought like, wait, do they love other people? Am I not the only one? And it was like, oh my gosh, this is the kind of question I would have about a relationship. Like, this is an attachment that had been born. This was like, and now I'm feeling threat if it gets taken away. But then they really taught me that, like, no, of course, like, look, our love is so vast, like, it's fully shareable. And like, you don't have to be the only one. You are part of us and we are part of you.
Mm. Oh, and there's something so that feeling when you were talking about the like the open-hearted attunement, non-defended like way of the relationship with the tree, and there's something about the feeling of being with the tree. Like when we were talking earlier, we had a very long catch up. So this woodland walk is going to be slightly shorter than usual because we had spent so long catching up. But just, well, I was struggling because today in the UK we had some really awful election results and Lindsay, you're in the US, so this is something that we've been struggling with the politics of the times. Um, and I was just feeling that real need to like go and be with a tree. And I was thinking, why do I need to go and be with a tree? And it's because there's something about the feeling of being with a tree that is is a real thing, is a real thing. So even someone listening that's like, because this will go out to people that aren't not just people in the ACER community, but other people that are on our mailing list, for people that haven't really connected with trees, like what is that thing? Why is it that when you're with a tree, even if you haven't really how would you put your finger on what it is? Or is it just too complex to
I mean, it's a beautiful question. Well, one, I mean, just to say, so the Buddha, right, awakened under a tree. The Buddha could have awakened anywhere, but it was under a tree. So I think of that. I think of the significance of tree lore in so many cultures around the world and written into so many kind of sacred systems and cosmologies. Like trees and humans are so connected in a way we're not with any other being because we are breathing their gift at every moment. We are only alive because we are basically being interpenetrated at every moment of the day by the oxygen that they've alchemized for us. So I think on a biological level, maybe evolutionary, like we are just woven together. Like a tree's life is tied to our life. They are the lungs of the planet. If they are not well, we will not survive. Just bottom line. So I think when we come back to a tree, there's something in our bodies that like elementally is like, oh, oh. like I feel different. And so that sensory recognition of homecoming, and it's just so sweet as I've been going on this book tour and having now so many conversations with people about trees, and then people are like trying to find a tree and build a relationship for the first time. I'm hearing a lot of first timers come back and just say like how meaningful it is, but just with the new lens of like, what if I was open to a kinship, not just to appreciating this tree or not, admiring the beauty, but like a conversation. What if a conversation could take place? And that's a bit of a different invitation, um, than just, yeah, admiration or appreciation. It's really about the invitation of relationship, which is so cool because what are we talking about? We're talking about like, could we speak the language of trees? Could we speak the language of the earth? And the answer is yes, but through the language of sensation, which is nonverbal. It's something happening between our bodies, whether we know it or not, but we get to open and deepen those skills and then come into more, fine-tuned awareness of that exchange. And then all kinds of things can come through, like
Mm.
messages, wisdom, comfort, emotion, surprise. Who knows? Like the depth of that bond is truly infinite.
Mm. I'm going to read out a couple of things um, that kind of link to what you were saying there. So I love this way of you describing the trees. I mean, obviously, you talk about trees in so many different ways, but this is a our generous teachers who defy domination, upend individualism, and subvert scarcity are waiting to help us remember, with wisdom and love, our connection to everything. I
Yeah.
mean,
What else do we need?
what else do we need? And something about the I'll read out some more of those things in a minute, but you were saying about that feeling of kind of coming back to them, that sensory awareness and that understanding that we can speak this language. There's something for me as well around knowing that all the tree roots underneath are connected and that we're standing over that and starting to imagine. So you see the tree and then you imagine that and then you suddenly realize that you're standing on that like network of support. That to me also
Yeah.
feels like when you feel alone, you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
I'm in a web right now.
Yes, yes. I belong to a forest, and I think that's so key because there's no king of the forest. The forest, as we know, I mean, scientists, scientists, this old way of like Darwinian, survival of the fittest really dominated the thinking about how trees operate as competitors. The work of Suzanne Simard, researcher from UBC, her book, A Mother Tree, now a new book she just came out with, I think The Forest Breathes. Um, she upended that notion and proves how trees collaborate to the point of sharing carbon, sharing sugars. That is also, yes, why I think there's something in us that's like, oh, this is what I need because I need to know that I'm a part of a collective and to relearn how to take care of each other, all life, not just humans, but all living systems. I think the forest is just modeling that constantly. I mean, they share sugars across species. They even have the ability, if like a deer bites their leaf or something, they can create more tannins in their leaves so that they're more bitter and like less appealing. So I that means to me they suffer, they're aware of pain. I mean, my personal view is like all life is animate, so I'm not really interested in like trying to prove like hierarchy of like animism or sentience or sacredness. Um, but yeah, that interconnectivity and entanglement, which I think is like takes that notion even a little further from the work of physicist Karen Barad, as well as others that really show that it's just like life processes happening in motion, not just like static entities that are connected.
Mm,
And that really appeals to me of like it's more about this like flowing emergence and this like intra processing coming into life together. And we can only do that together. We
mm,
can't do that as individuals. And we think we can in the West, right? We can't. And we're seeing that in all the symptoms from like mental health level or the symptoms of climate collapse, glacier melts, ocean acidification, rising temperatures. I think all of those are symptoms of disconnection and unwellness. So looking at it that way, like also reconnects us back to like we can't be well on a planet that is sick. So then we get to be a part of like nurturing and nourishing that web as they nourish us back.
And the nourishing and nurturing of the web is so gives us so much. It gives us something to focus on. It gives us a purpose. It gives us something to fight for. You were saying a bit about your tell us a bit about the Heartwood Institute and your work with protecting the rights of nature.
Yeah, so out of this book, I'm starting, it's in its early nascent stages, but the Heartwood Institute, which is really devoted to culture change through kind of, yeah, what this book kind of outlines. But one of those efforts oh, can I pause?
Yeah. Oh, yes, yes,
No.
yes, yes.
Can you
No,
edit
no,
this
totally,
out?
totally. Yeah, no, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Well, yes, we can. Lee will go through it and do it. But yes, yes, yes. Of course.
Okay. I just really fudged that. Okay.
I
Hopefully
think
they
we
can
should keep
edit
it in
that
now
part
just
out.
because it would be so funny. But no, we definitely we can do
Okay.
it.
Um, yes, the Heartwood Institute is really born out of this book and dedicated to restoring kinship between humans and nature. And I see that as a culture change invitation, as well as science and spirituality. And one of the cornerstones of what I'm working on right now is advancing the rights of nature, which is a really powerful framework that started in New Zealand and then in Ecuador and is kind of spreading across the world now, but granting personhood to living systems. So here I'm working on that for the Roaring Fork River and watershed, which is a key artery through this whole valley and really is like kind of bringing everything to the fore right now because the Rockies had the worst snowpack on record this year. So the worst snow ever in the history of recording snow. And what that means for the life of our rivers is like drastic. So, and now we have a really big El Nino coming, which means increased wildfire risk. So it's all just like we need to be reimagining how we're in connection with our living systems. And I think this relational component that the rights of nature offers is just so compelling. And I think it gives people like a fresh new way of thinking. The legal mechanism is quite interesting, giving the river like a seat at the table, so a voice in decision making and creating like a guardianship for the river. Um, but just at a like public level, I think it also just helps people think totally differently from resource to relation.
Mm. And you were mentioning earlier something around hoping to work in the future with Indigenous groups who have been protecting their relations, their ancestors, their rivers, their
Yeah.
land. Can,
Yes.
that to me is really interesting, especially because another strand through the book is around psychedelics. You've worked as a psychedelic facilitator, trained as a psychedelic facilitator, talk a lot about the psychedelic field in the book. And we were having a little chat earlier about the executive order and our hope and also trepidations around it. And so I think there's something around the lack of respect for Indigenous voices is such a glaring, painful
Yeah.
aspect of the psychedelic movement of the times. But I guess with working with nature, with trees, that's woven together, and there's an opportunity for working with people that have been holding these
Yeah.
places, taking care of them for so long.
Absolutely.
How does that work?
I mean, absolutely. And, you know, Indigenous people are really at the front lines of defending the most fragile ecosystems on Earth. And they're facing higher arrest rates because of that work. They're undersupported, and yet they hold the knowledge and wisdom of generations that needs to be honored and elevated and listened to. Um, I think it just is logical sense that we would want to really be at the feet of those that are still living in harmony with their living systems, right? So it's kind of like this obvious thing. Um, but so much of that worldview, and I say indigenous peoples not to create like a homogenous, like there's obviously many different groups around the world um, that have distinct philosophies and cosmologies, etc. But there is a weave of this deep sense of concentricity and relationality with nature as pretty central. And then this responsibility to take care of all of those relations. And so um yeah, part of the Institute's work would be really supporting those frontline defenders, specifically forests and old growth forests, just because of the nature of this book. But they're doing that everywhere from ocean to communities and yeah. just wetland communities, just really important ecosystems all over the globe.
And I love how you said that. Wouldn't we want to be at the feet of those who have carried this and who have lived in harmony for so long? And that is very relevant for the psychedelic field as well. Would we not want to sit at the feet of those who have the lineage and the culture and the understanding? But
Right. And
only
as you know, yeah, yeah, and as just to raise, as you know, I mean, the extreme kind of overexploitation of peyote, for example, wachuma, and these like very beautiful medicines that have been held by indigenous communities in ceremony, in their practice for so long, and now are being taken out and overused and depleted. So it's really a glaring mirror, right, for the West to like look at ourselves and realize like how quickly the impulse to take, something so precious, turn it into like a product, sell it, and then over deplete it until it's gone. And that's the norm. So to push up against that and counter that and invite restraint, invite real reciprocity, invite attunement and subtlety to those relational qualities is really an indigenous knowledge system lens. So not just like have we gotten to the tipping point with our temperature globally, but there's a scholar named Kyle Powes White, indigenous scholar, who talks about the relational tipping point. So qualities of reciprocity and trust are, he says, just as important, if not more, than our climate activism. And so that invitation is really one of like, wow, how am I living actually in relation to nature, but then also even into my work of if it's in psychedelics or if it's in conservation or whatever it is, what qualities am I embodying and bringing attention there?
That's beautiful. And that the quality of reciprocity feels so fundamental to the forest. It's what
Yeah,
reciprocity is what makes the forest
yeah,
thrive and important for us all
yeah,
to think. That's one way we can be more tree, isn't it? Is just to think about how reciprocal we're being in our relationships. We think about it a lot in ASA as well, like as we're thinking structurally for the communities, like reciprocity is really like kind of the rule. We
yeah,
should finish
yeah.
because I don't want to go over your time, and we had such a long chat before that we really finished. We should finish, but I really want to say to everybody listening, like this is really one of the this book is one of the best books I've read for a long time. It's absolutely stunning, and it's yes, it's moving, it's beautifully written. Everyone, please buy it. Heartwood, where can people buy it? Lindsay, give us a little list of different. Yeah.
Well, if you're listening in the US, I would go to bookshop.org because it brings you to independent bookstores wherever you are and just recommend getting from an independent bookstore. If you're in the UK, Waterstones carries it. Obviously Amazon UK. Um, yeah. So I would, yeah, welcome your responses too. I'd love to be in dialogue about it.
And leave reviews on Amazon, right?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
so people find it.
yes.
Yes.
Leave reviews on Amazon. Even though we hate Amazon, leave reviews on Amazon so more
Yeah.
people know about the book. And Lindsay, come back and speak to us again soon. Good luck with the rest of your book tour.
Thank
And
you.
just thank you for putting into words what many of us, I think, have been feeling.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for holding that post in Acer and just such a pleasure to talk to another tree. Love it.
Tree hugs to you. And actually also tree screams as well. Like where,
Yeah.
I'm going off a good scream in the forest soon. It's not just tree hugging, it's also tree screaming. So yeah,
Yeah.
keep doing that too.
Yes.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you everyone for listening and see you all soon. And Lindsay will be with us for the Q&A in a couple of weeks' time to answer your questions. So definitely read the book because then you can ask Lindsay in person on our Q&A your questions about the book and Lindsay's story and journey. So thanks everyone. Thank you, Lindsay. Where is the button? Oh my goodness. Zoom has suddenly changed. I'm sorry we've kept you longer, Lindsay. Oh, there we go.
That's
Stop
okay.
recording.